Hi everybody and welcome to Learn Livestreaming Live. I'm John Lacey. Today on the show we're going to be talking all about different show structures, segments and formats and things you might want to think about in terms of actually how you might actually organize reoccurring content to make your life a little bit easier and maybe to give the audience a better sense of what to expect in future episodes. But we are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching live, let me know where you're watching from. It's great to have your company today. And I guess let's get stuck into things because, you know, let's think about the different types of shows you can put out there. And I guess, first of all, I really want to focus on episodic content. So content that you'll continue to create for some time. Obviously, this is a live streaming show, but there's no reason you can't apply these same ideas to audio podcasts or any other thing really. But we just want to think about how the content is structured and any exciting things that you might be doing. So I guess, first of all, what kind of content do you want to make? Is it something that is just solo content? Is it something where you might have a co-host? Is it something where you might want to have a guest on as well? That's another possibility. But of course, we've got all those options. And of course, even the idea of a panel show. But again, with panel shows, the more people you bring on, the more you sort of need to work out a system for organizing who's going to be speaking when, because we want to make sure that we're not sort of missing out on any of that good stuff. I just wanted to make sure that I am definitely going live. So I am live, hopefully. So that is the case. That's awesome. Just double checking things behind the scenes. But I'm really curious. I guess let's talk about some of the benefits and trade-offs of some of these different types of formats. So solo content, if you can do it whenever you want to do it and whenever you're available. Whereas with guests, even with a co-host, you sort of have to think about the scheduling aspect of all of this because it may not be a good time for other people. And there are time zones, there's daylight savings sort of starting and ending. Things can be subject to change quite a lot. So you do need to keep that into consideration. I guess the other thing too is, we do need to think about the technology that you're using a little bit. We're not going to really explicitly get into that too much today unless you have questions, and if you do, throw them in the chat and we'll talk about them. But we do need to be mindful of different internet connections. Some are better than others. Some won't really get you to the point where you do have the quality that you're looking for sometimes. Are your guests sort of seasoned when it comes to speaking on camera? Do they know how things work? Do they have the technology? One of the bugbears that I see a lot of is people just refusing to wear headphones, and that can sort of lead to the most terrible audio feedback loop that you can imagine. So, you know, it's really important, I guess, to set those expectations up front. What do you expect of your guest or your co-host? Or potentially your panel members as well. So that's another thing to think about. All right. So I guess in terms of all of those things, it's worthwhile thinking about those and being mindful of those. But the reason I kind of wanted to talk about this week is because I used to be incredibly structured, and lately, because life has been so busy, I really haven't been able to do that as much as I want to. Because if you've been here for any period of time and you remember the video and live streaming show that I did with Sam Proof, it was incredibly structured. We had 4 segments. I had 4 tabs on my screen, which I can probably even show you this. So this is, I'll probably need to rearrange this a little bit. So I make myself smaller in the frame here, and I'm just going in the background of. So I literally used to have something like this, where I'd have 4 separate colored tabs on here, and we'd actually go from tab to tab to tab, covering these 4 different segments. And roughly about 15 minutes a segment for these for an hour show. So that's how I used to sort of do things, and I really liked that, and I thought that was great. And I think people really enjoyed that too, but because life has been so busy, I haven't been able to plan out these as much as I normally have in the past. And a part of me is very structure driven. Like, that's really very important to me. And I kind of miss that I haven't been able to do that. It's just that life's been so busy and so hectic that I really haven't had a chance to do it. So, that's what's been happening there. So I kind of want to revisit that a little bit. I kind of want to make sure that it's definitely, because I want to make sure that I'm valuing your time. I want to make sure that I have the segments. And I guess the other thing too is because I had a co-host, there was often somebody I could throw to. Whereas these days, I'm often speaking by myself for a solid 30 minutes to an hour. And, you don't necessarily want to put yourself in the position of having to do that, although I'm pretty happy that I'm able to do that. But I guess really, it's a good idea to think about breaking things up, having reoccurring segments, and, having things that you can play between those segments too, because that was the other great thing about the video and live streaming show is I had little ads, little promos for Sam's content and my content as well. And that just broke things up. So that was really, really good. All right. Hello to Saeed, who's watching from Germany. I must admit, I was a little worried I was talking to nobody, but there's Saeed. So thank you for joining. Great to see you. Today on the show, we are talking about sort of show formats and segments and some of the things that you might want to keep in mind when sort of arranging episodic content. So I think in some ways you want to have some structure, and I know some people are very big on just turning the camera on and doing whatever for an hour. I really appreciate it if you can let me know up front what you're talking about, where the conversation might be headed, and that sort of thing. So again, I admitted earlier that I'm kind of guilty of not doing that of late, just because life has been so busy. I haven't had the time to plan. This week, I haven't even had a chance to write the Learn Livestreaming newsletter, which is usually the place where I work out my thoughts and the structure of the show that I want to do. So, I'm trying to get back in touch with that a little bit. So I'm really curious if you do create episodic content, or maybe even if you're interested in doing something slightly different, but maybe you have a structure to the way that you facilitate educational training sessions or anything like that, really. Because again, I sort of mentioned this earlier, but I think it's worth revisiting, so we'll do it again. For the video and live streaming show, I used to have these magical little tabs, and we would sort of go between them, and the actual words on these tabs would change from show to show, and then we would cover each one of these, and it'd be roughly 15 minutes a segment for the hour show. So I thought that was really useful, and part of me, I feel like, maybe the way the visual treatment of these isn't really that exciting in the scheme of things. I'd probably revisit that, but I love the idea of it, and I'm really sort of curious, because sometimes people just want to chat, and that's great, that's wonderful. But if I do have content I really want to cover, I really want to make sure I've got some sort of structure towards all of that. So Saeed writes, I have an outline, which I think is always a really good place to start from. All right, cool. So the other things that I think are worth sort of talking about is, is it solo content? Do you have a co-host? Are you bringing on guests? Do you have some sort of panel arrangement? That's good too. Hello to live stream consultants who's saying good afternoon. Great to have your company today. It's actually Saturday morning here in Australia in the future, but it's great to hear from you. And I think really, you need to decide what your goals are. And I know we always come back to goals, and I think sometimes that can feel a bit abstract at times, but really, if you have a sense of what you'd like to achieve, you can work back from that. And it could be that maybe networking is the goal of the enterprise. Maybe that's the thing, you want to reach out to different people. Because I'll tell you this, being on a live stream with someone, having a chat with them, and then talking to them after it's ended is an amazing bonding experience. And I won't tell you who, but one person after an episode of the video and live streaming show who was a guest, they actually stayed on for another hour just talking about the things that they were doing with me. Sam actually left shortly after the show because he had to pick up the kids, but it's one of those things that when you have that experience, when you talk to somebody one-on-one in that fashion, and you've really appreciated them and showcased them, they're very comfortable, they're very relaxed, and they will, there's something sort of magical about that. And a part of me wants to do that, but I found in the past, actually collaborating with people is really difficult because of time zones, because of technologies, because of different internet connections. And probably more than anything is just the scheduling aspect of it, because I go live at sort of this basic time, and I realize it's probably slightly different for some of you because of the daylight savings stuff starting and ending. But this is the time of the week when I'm kind of alert and awake and I have free time and I'm not at my day job. So that works really well for me, but I'm very conscious of the fact, like, it's ridiculously late at night, possibly early in the morning for Saeed, for example, over in Germany. So, you know, and the flip side of this is occasionally Americans will want me to join them on their show, and I'll be like, I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. to talk to you. I'm sure it would be a lovely conversation, but I'm an old man. I need my sleep. So there are the logistics of that, and I think if you have been around here for a little while and you've seen the video and live streaming show that I did with Samproof, there was a very real internet connection issue between Sam and I. And it was just, I tried so hard to make it work for such a really long time because I really, you know, he's my friend and I value his input and his expertise in these matters, but it was just so difficult to make it work consistently. And that's one of the things about live streaming. Like, even if your internet connection isn't great, if you're just by yourself, if the lag is consistent, you know, it's not usually a big deal. And Livestream Consultant writes, I have experienced that multiple times. Sometimes the chat after the stream is more interesting than what we discussed on the live. It's really interesting because you were probably quite nervous going into that conversation. You're probably really happy by the end of it that it went well, and you're just so relieved. And I think you almost need to be a little bit careful that you don't volunteer too much after one of those conversations, because you're often so comfortable and so relaxed. And whether you've known that person for years or whether you've only really met them that day, it's really funny because sometimes people will be so caught up in the moment that they will say things and make promises that maybe they hadn't thought through. Maybe they don't really have the bandwidth to actually put into practice. So you do need to take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. But it is really an extraordinary experience. And, you know, I sort of I interact with a lot of people online, mostly in text. I do watch their videos and things as well, which can be really, really cool. But there is something about talking to somebody in real time which is quite magical. And Saeed writes, or even before, sometimes there are awesome unrecorded chats in the prep time green room. And I guess the only thing I would say about that is just, you know, it's okay to record things, but just let somebody know if what they're saying might be used, because I've certainly had recordings where, like, the minute I stop recording, we're on a different level and we're using much more colorful language, and I don't necessarily want that stuff shared with the world. But, you know, it's one of those things you have to negotiate. And I've certainly heard conversations even this week about, you know, when should you start hit recording. And again, even that probably depends a little bit on your software stack and what you're doing and what you're hoping to achieve. And live stream consultants writes, totally agree, Saeed. Okay, awesome. So we've got that. I think it's you know, and again, it's kind of up to you how structured or how loose you want any of these things to be. And especially if you have a guest, they will say things and you'll have thoughts and you'll want to take the conversation in different directions. And the same is true of just the text chat in the live stream as well. So, and that's always a possibility. You kind of need to make a call about whether that thing is relevant to the overall topic and whether you want to indulge that or whether you want to say, hey, that's a little bit outside of the scope of what we're talking about today. I think both of those options are valid, but it's really, really worthwhile. So I'm curious, and I guess especially like in Saeed's world of facilitation, where I'm assuming that a lot of the things that you do, Saeed, are timed out in a very particular way. Like, people might only have half an hour or an hour to meet with you to learn whatever they need to learn. So I'm really curious also about timekeeping. And I have a feeling that may not be Saeed's strong suit, but I'm really curious to hear about how he manages those sorts of things. and how anyone does, actually. So we are going out live to all the various places, so don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I think I've got a button for that. Let me press it. Like and subscribe. I need a sound effect for that as well. We need to work on that. And I guess that's the other part of this. And I don't want to... I'll talk about it a little bit, but I actually want to do another show about this probably in 2 weeks' time, is about creating live stream assets. Because, you know, a lot of these shows that I've been doing lately are literally me just talking for an hour. But I think it is worthwhile to think about, you know, having little banners pop up on your screen, like this, for example. Just the build a presentation promo just flashes across the screen and tells you to go to johnlacey.com. Or the like and subscribe. But also, if you actually do have things that you want to share, resources, calls to action, lead magnets, it's probably worthwhile building some content around that as well that you can play in streams. And I might show you one of those in a second. But let me just check in with the chat as well. So Saeed writes, I always have time blocked before and after the official time slot, just in case. Okay, awesome. Because, you know, Saeed's great, but, you know, he is sometimes prone to spotting those squirrels and getting a little bit distracted. So, and I guess the other thing about going live is if you do have the time, you can make it as long or as short as you want it to be. It doesn't necessarily need to fit the rigid scheduling of mainstream media. And I thought, I heard it on a podcast once that, you know, How I Met Your Father, which was sort of a spin-off from How I Met Your Mother, the TV show, they actually... Once they went to a streaming-only model, they stopped worrying about making sure that it fit into the 30-minute time slot perfectly. They had a little bit more freedom to play around with. And I think that's something that we kind of have access to as well. So I think that's worth playing with if you can. Again, I know everything I'm saying today is really up to the individual, so you get to make those calls. But some people do, and like that's the thing, the difference between Sam and I, for example. Sam will just go live for like 6 hours at a time and he'll just work on whatever and he will chat and he will play games and stuff. And if I'm on for longer than an hour, something's gone very, very wrong in my life because I don't really want to be on camera for more than 1 hour at a time. It takes, I'm pretty introverted and just being here takes a fair bit of energy and motivation to show up. So as much as I love doing these shows and having you guys drop in and talk to me, I don't want them to drag on forever. That said, I am playing with the idea of actually grouping my shows together and just having a replay stream. And I don't know if people would watch that, although the last time I tried that, I was genuinely surprised at how many views it got on YouTube. So maybe that is something that you can do. And of course, if you don't know Sam Proof, he runs this 24/7 live stream of cats for Cute Avalanche, which you can find over at, if I press this button, you'll actually see it on the screen, cuteavalanche.com, where you can find all the cats and the Just Kidding Around podcast and all of the things. So a lot of that content now is actually pre-recorded content that he's replaying. So there are all kinds of things you can do with live streaming, and I guess you don't necessarily need to imagine it as one thing or another. You get to choose what things that you bring together and sort of how you rearrange those and how you progress with those. It's kind of up to you. You get to choose. So Livestream Consultants writes, when you are having a guest with specific information on a topic, we plan for an hour, but make sure the guest is okay if the discussion needs to go longer to cover the information and chat questions. I think that's a great strategy. Okay, so I guess the other thing too, like the shows that I've done in the past have been very focused on a single topic. And sometimes, you know, the chat or the guest will take that into new and exciting places. And I think that's always okay. But I guess the other thing you can do is combine different segments around different topics, and hopefully they all have some sort of alignment, you know, some overarching topic that's all the same. And I think about, you know, even Saeed's email newsletter, and if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check it out. In fact, If you don't know Saeed Sadouk, he's been on the show a few times on various shows. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna put something in the chat to give a link to his YouTube channel. So just put that up on the screen so you can check that out at youtube.com/@thefacilitator. The thing that is kind of funny about my chat commands is that now they go to YouTube and Twitch, and basically it'll work on YouTube or Twitch, but if it gives me a cooldown thing. I'll have to talk to Sam about that. I've got to change those settings, but that's fine. You can check him out. So I guess, that's really interesting. Like he has a very particular way of structuring, or at least it seems like it to me. I'm not sure that he would necessarily say the same thing, but I do like the way that it's sort of split out into different settings, different sort of little segments about a general topic. I think that's really, really cool. Okay, so what we might do now, and I'm just going to use this as a bit of an example, but especially if you are somebody who's just streaming by yourself, I know we can talk for an hour or longer. I don't know that we need to fill every second of every minute, and I know that's an anxiety a lot of newbies have, but I think sometimes if you can have segments of pre-recorded stuff, they'll give you a moment to rest your voice, they'll give you a moment to catch your breath and just chill out, and potentially drink your coffee, and I'm going to press a magical button on my Stream Deck to give myself a break right now. Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator. And that's a little promo for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. And that's kind of an example of something I think is probably worthwhile thinking about and building into a stream setup. And how you do this will definitely vary from platform to platform and tool to tool in terms of the live streaming technology. But essentially making videos, making images, doing little animated things, even something as simple as a be right back screen, like just a graphic that says be right back, and maybe reflect some of your colors and some of your branding as well, can be really, really awesome. And I guess the other thing, I'm really thinking about this, but again, I'm so time poor at the moment. It's kind of ridiculous. But like for OBS Obsessed, for example, a part of me really wants to spend some time recording just OBS little short, maybe 30 to 60 second tips about OBS, and just maybe interjecting some of those into the show between segments, just to give myself a little bit of a break and just to remind people about really cool features. And that's the thing, if you are on camera yourself and you don't have a guest or a co-host to throw to, sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you really just need to catch your breath or take a sip of coffee. I mean, I've got my coffee here in the John Lacey mug today. So, sometimes you need to do that. And I think, like I said, how that happens is a bit different between like Restream Studio or OBS Studio or Ecamm potentially. But I think it's really worthwhile and bringing those into your scene collections and setting up your own scenes and sources. And of course, it's a little bit of an investment, but I think, certainly Saeed would agree that the Stream Deck just does such magical things, and the fact that you can set up buttons to do things on the show is really, really epic and really, really cool. So, I think it's worthwhile thinking about those. And again, in something like Restream Studio, you can kind of almost upload videos and images on the fly. But I think in OBS, you really need to think about that before you go live. And if you needed to, you could certainly switch to studio mode and do that as well. But I think it's worthwhile sort of thinking about that up front. And Said writes, it was hard work to get there and find a structure, but worth it. And I guess that's the thing. You don't want to be recreating the wheel every single week or every single time you go to do something. And that's true of articles, newsletters, audio podcasts, video live streams, video on demand. You want to focus on the content, not necessarily the things around the content. You want to have a way of working that you don't need to reinvent every single time, because that stuff is time consuming And you kind of want to actually make sure you've got some sort of workflow that will work for you and that you can sort of master and become efficient at. So I'm really curious, for those of you that do live content, well, not even live content, but episodic content, do you have some sort of structure in place? Do you have a show run documents? Are you producing for somebody else? And like, how structured is that? Because especially with some of the lag that Sam and I had to work with, there was a part of me that wanted to throw to a promo like the second he's finished speaking. But often I didn't really know if that was going to be the last thing he intended to say or not. So that potentially could be a little bit awkward. So, how much you plan these things out is up to you. But again, I think it is kind of worthwhile to have a sense of where you're going. And I'm just going to see in the background here, if I do have a show run document, maybe I can share with you to give a sense of how that show was sort of structured. And it's funny, I've got one very specific one that keeps coming up. So I'm just going to have a quick look at this. And if it makes sense to share this. Okay, I think we'll share that one. All right, cool. Let me press this magical button. All right, so this is literally a Google Doc that was the template for the show. And this was episode 103, letting go of things that no longer serve us. There's a whole bunch of things at the top here that relate to the running of the show. Adding the RMTP details to OBS, turning on various scenes and sources and sharing different things with Sam, different links. There's a link to something there which you can see, but I don't use that anymore. Making sure the Restream chat is open and Social Stream Ninja is all ready to go. And then we'd have sort of the breakdown of this show. And again, some weeks this was really planned out quite elaborately. This is obviously not one of those. This was very light, and there was always that possibility that it was hard for me to get Sam to sort of tell me up front what he wanted to talk about. So just because he was so busy. But these were different segments. And again, if I go back to my tabs here, so if I go featured, we would actually break these 4 segments out and give them names in different colors. And, I'd talk about the origins, the tech, the mindset, and the future. And we'd have these sort of colored backgrounds that matched up with these tabs. And again, this is all in OBS, and it's very easy for me to change the text on these and go from there. But if I go back to, in fact, let's go full screen, and then we'll go back to the screen share. We'd sort of have these notes where we're going to play different promos. Again, really wonderful way of breaking up an hour is to have these 4 segments and have promos between them. There would be certain things that I would say after I play each of these promos, and potentially have some things up there as well. Those were sort of the things that we were kind of working with. So Livestream Consultants writes, for the streams that I run for others, definitely need a run of show. It helps keep everyone on the same page, even contingencies for when things don't go as planned. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing about live is stuff can go wrong. And the advice I mostly give people is you just need to be okay with that. But the flip side of that is it's often a good idea to think about those contingencies. So if your camera, dies, which definitely happened to me on a previous show, what is the backup plan? Do you have a static image that can take its place until you can set something up? Can you switch to a second or third camera? It's worthwhile keeping those things. And especially if you're producing a stream, like most of the content I do is me running literally everything. So I kind of know when I'm about to finish speaking so I can press the button to go to the next thing. But if you've got more people than yourself on a production team, then you kind of need to clue them into what's happening and what you intend to do and where you intend to take the conversation. So that's definitely something that you might want to keep in mind. I am sort of curious, and again, I'm doing this all in real time, but I just wonder actually if I can find a show run document that had a lot more information, because that's the thing. Sometimes I get pretty nervous and pretty anxious about going live, and the thing that helps me is planning and knowing what I want to cover and where I want to take things. So I'm just going to see briefly if I can see an example of this that might have a lot of stuff in it. And again, it might take me a little while to find this, but just bear with me for a second. But that Google Doc template was kind of amazing. And you can actually set those up as proper templates. I never did. I always just duplicated a previous show and sort of went from there. But you know, again, it's another great example of a place you can be a little bit more efficient and you don't need to recreate that document from scratch each week. I say that occasionally I would do that anyway, just because something about the repetition of that is just, it's just nice for me as a creator. I don't know what it is exactly. It's just the way my brain works, is that sometimes the routines and the repetition can help me think about different things. And I probably need to go quite back into the archives because a lot of these shows, you know, just really did not go into great detail in these planning documents. So again, like I said, I don't want to be prescriptive about any of this. You need to sort of decide what's going to make sense for you. But I think if you do it on a regular basis, thinking about when your breaks are, you know, how you work. So whether that's actually running the stream itself and the content that you want to cover are definitely things that you probably want to take a break and think about a little bit, just to make sure that it all comes together. And I guess the flip side of this, and I admitted this earlier, so it's not a great shock to anybody, I don't think. But the place I do a lot of my thinking is actually in writing. So what I would do traditionally is I would actually write a newsletter article, and I say it's actually a LinkedIn newsletter. So you can sort of go in and check that out. So let me show you this. Make this full screen so you can check it out. Okay, so this is the newsletter section on LinkedIn for my profile, and I've got different newsletters for different things. That's one for my podcast. I've got this one for the Learn Livestreaming. So you know, I'd go in here, and occasionally what I usually like to do is write these before the show, but because of the time constraints recently, a lot of the time I'm sort of writing these after the show. But in some ways, that can be even better because I know exactly what I've covered. So if we check out this older one about YouTube profile makeover, 2025, I've embedded the video. We sort of talk about the different things that we've got here. The great thing about writing articles and blogs is that we have the ability to structure them with headings and bulleted lists and numbered lists. So this is really, really cool. And you can sort of explain the things that you're covering, and you can give people a bit of a preview. And I also, you know, remind people to subscribe to YouTube or connect with me on LinkedIn, for example, and show some of the other content I've got there as well. So, you know, 658 subscribers currently, which is a number I'm proud of. And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of energy, but, you know, we're getting somewhere, and I think that's really epic. So again, you may not be a writer. You may just want to scribble down some notes. You may want to just think about it, because I guess that's the thing. Because I schedule these ahead of time, I know basically what the subject is. I just need to get a little bit more granular about how I approach different things. And I know some people will almost go in the opposite direction. They'll just do the live recording with whatever planning they decide's appropriate. I see a lot of people running things through ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. If you've been here a hot second, you know I'm not a fan of that, but you do you. I'm not your parent or your boss. You need to decide what's appropriate for you. But essentially, we've got those options there, and you know, it's a great opportunity to repurpose some of that content as well. All right. So just a reminder to like and subscribe, seeing as the chatbot is reminding me to tell you that. Put that up on the screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, so essentially think about the time that you're allocating for the episodic content. How are you going to break that up? And the other thing about this is I actually, and again, this is such a nerdy thing, but I got some JavaScript. I made a little clock in one of the scenes in OBS that literally just shows me my local time. And I broadcast that onto my fourth little monitor, which is a Field World field monitor, and that way I can sort of see where I'm up to in terms of the show, because sometimes some weeks you'll be talking and not realize that the hour's gone in the blink of the eye, but other times, you know, you'll look at it and think, wow, I've said so much and I've still got so much time to fill in. But again, as I said earlier, you don't need to go longer than you feel you need to. You always have that option to sort of you know, wrap it up when you want to, or go longer if you feel that's appropriate as well. So what I really want to know, and I'm going to do this just to test if people are still watching, is Saeed, if you're listening, if you're watching, if you're out there, and I think you might be, and I appreciate it's really, really very late this time of the day / night for Saeed. But I am curious if you'd be interested in coming on a future show. I know the time is weird, so if the answer is no, that's totally fine. But I'm just going to put that out there because I know we have done some things in the past, and I think they've gone pretty well. And I'm always impressed by your ability to show me something in a tool that I've been using for a while that I just didn't know about. And, you know, I probably shouldn't be as surprised by that because you go really deep and you're very knowledgeable. And I just want to, let me just see if I can actually share, if this is okay. And I'm going to assume it's okay. I just want to find Saeed's newsletter. I want to show you the recent one because I think this is really epic and really cool. So if you're not, let me just see if I can pop this out. Just to give you a brief overview. All right, let me make this full screen. So again, like this is newsletter content. This isn't really live streaming content, but you can definitely see that this is an approach that you could take to actually do something quite similar. Okay, I just didn't want to share an email address, but there we go. All right, so this is the Facilitainment Weekly, your weekly guide to fun and engaging online facilitation. And this one is kind of about sort of screen sharing and mouse cursors. Okay. All right, so, you know, it's laid out quite beautifully. You know, it gives you clues. Like there are special settings with Logitech devices. And I found this out recently because I bought a new Logitech keyboard, which I really love. It doesn't have a print screen button, but otherwise it's pretty epic. And it comes with its own software. And here you can sort of see that there are options to actually change the cursors and the size and the colors and highlights and magnifying and laser stuff, which is really, really cool. There's also the Stream Deck version, which is something I've covered on a previous show as well. That was really cool. This company, I can't actually see what that is off the top of my head, well, on the screen anyway, but the company that makes this one actually makes so many epic Stream Deck plugins, and they're all free and they're all really, really cool. And I've done shows on those in the past, but they're really brilliant. And sometimes I forget they exist, and I have to remind myself, and I have to set up new buttons. And of course, there's information about upcoming training sessions as well, other tools that are worth mentioning. Looking for a new mouse. Again, I was curious, Saeed, reading this, which one do you actually use? I'm assuming you use one of these three. I'd be really interested to know. And you can optimize zoom levels in any app. And of course, there's a bit of humor in the Enough Said section, which is, of course, a dig at Microsoft Teams, which is a very common occurrence, and some upcoming events as well. So I enjoy that, and I know it's something like, Saeed, as much as he describes himself as a textrovert, which is an extrovert in the text, I know it takes a fair bit of concentration, and like the struggle is real to put that together, but it is such an amazing resource. So if you're not already subscribed to that one, check it out at thefacilitainer.com. It's really epic. And again, Saeed writes, last week I was on an all-Australian event at 10 p.m. my time, so sure, count me in. Okay, cool. You'll have to... So was that a Miro board one? Let me know about that in the chat. All right. It says, under the mice, I use the MX vertical at the moment. There you go. Well, that just goes to show how observant I am. Actually said it in there. Yes, okay. That does look like a good one. I must admit, this is not a Logitech mouse, but it is a vertical one, and it's very cheap, and I really like it. I like the vertical mice. The only thing is the scroll wheel on this one is bizarrely loud and squeaky. So I hope it's not too... Actually, it's okay at the moment, but some days I just find that it's bizarrely squeaky, and it just distracts me, something terrible. But anyway, that's okay. So I guess, the main things I want to leave you with this week, I suppose, think about the format of your show and how you're involving other people. Again, as a solo creator, it's, you have all the flexibility, but you also have all the responsibility as well. It can be more fun with friends, but again, you do need to consider the technical implications of that, and also just the scheduling and the time zones and all of the things. So, it's something to keep in mind. But if you can break up your allocated time into a number of different shorter segments, that's really good. You could have reoccurring segments. And again, in the same way that Saeed has that funny little thing at the end of his newsletter, maybe that could be a segment in the show that people know about. And you could even invite people to collaborate with you to send in their own things for that as well. And Saeed writes, it was an AU and Z community event. I was a guest speaker, not a live stream, but still counts. Okay, awesome. All right, so you can do that as well. Having some sort of show run document is really good, even if it's just a note to yourself that you want to stay on topic and these are the things you want to cover. Or it could be something where you're working with a producer and they really need to know what the segments are and where the breaks are and when people will be speaking and that kind of thing, so that they can run the live stream production remotely. That's something that's really, really important too. And again, I'm really curious if you were to add a reoccurring segment to your show, or frankly, even this show, or OBS Obsessed, I'd love to hear ideas about that, because like I said, I really want to take some time and record some short, snappy OBS Studio tips that I can play between the segments. And maybe I'll get a chance to do that sometime in the future and be able to do that. But I guess the other thing too is, what are the things that you want to drive people towards, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a lead magnet, whether it's a paid training session or services or products, that kind of thing. Think about actually making some content for that as well, because I'm going to give you a classic example of where I haven't done that, but where I need to do that, is that I kind of want people at the end of these shows to check out the Learn Livestreaming newsletter, which is this one here. It's hosted on LinkedIn. I will throw this into the chat because I haven't set up a button for this either, but Learn Livestreaming newsletter, and johnlacey.com/news will redirect you to this. But again, I really need to record a short video about this. I need to set up, some sort of call to action banner that I can play across the bottom of the screen. These are things that are definitely on my list. And hello to Frozen Fusion, who I believe is Ernesto. Great to have your company today. And forever playing with the magical little emojis that are, I think, Twitch specific, those ones. And they're often really, really small, and I can't always make them out on my screen. But I think, let me click on this one. Let's have a look at it. I'm really not sure what that is off the top of my head, but I'll look at it after the show. It's fine. But yes, if you do have something specific you want to draw people's attention to, think about making some content for that. And that is something I will cover, probably not next week, but the week after on this show, is how do you build a video that is to be played between segments? Or how do you have an overlay like this like and subscribe thing, which I built in DaVinci Resolve in the Fusion tab, which again, there are entire videos on my channel of how I did that. So if you want to check that out, you can do that as well. And even little things like this, the banners that flash across the screen. That one's for Sam's Endeavor Cute Avalanche. And then there's one for Build a Presentation Muscle as well. These are things that you do need to kind of build up front, but I think it is worthwhile having them. And again, how formal those are within the show is entirely up to you when you get to choose. And again, you might want to work those into those show run documents. So I am curious, and just out of interest, I know a number of the people that are showing up in the chat right now. Do you actually have a live show or a podcast or a video show? Do you make videos on demand? Do you plan on doing this sometime in the future? I realize Livestream Consultants has clients and obviously produces content with other people. That's really cool. And Saeed does his training sessions predominantly on Zoom, but occasionally he'll do the great stuff on YouTube as well. And Livestream Consultants writes, no matter the stream format, you can interject any short segment such as an ad read, even for your own stuff is perfectly fine. Many creators do it. Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things to think about in terms of that. One, maybe if you do want to feature ads for other people's stuff in the future, starting with ads for your own content, I think is a really good way of setting some expectations, and just having slots that are built into your show. And then if you want to swap them out later, you can. But a lot of the time, if you do have your own products and services, that can be much more lucrative than sort of getting a tiny little bit of affiliate revenue from something else. So either way is fine. And again, I'm not somebody that uses live streaming really to make money. Like I just do this because I love it and I want to share, and I'm a teacher, or I was a teacher by trade, and a part of me just feels the need to do this. But I do want to draw your attention to other things in my ecosystem, and I want to sort of build connections and encourage people to follow and like and connect with me on social media and do all of the things. So I think that's good. But even like just the fact that it'll give you 30 seconds, 15 seconds to stop talking, catch your breath, take a sip of coffee or water, I think that is really, really magical. And I can't overplay how useful that is. That can be amazing. And it could be something as simple as just a be right back screen. But again, if it has some real content, that can hopefully help the viewer stay engaged. So I think that's really worthwhile thinking about. Again, the tools that you'll reach for to create a lot of this stuff will be graphics tools and video tools, video editing software. There are all kinds of options out there. I do really like DaVinci Resolve at the moment, but I realize that's probably a bit of a jump for some people. But even something like CapCut can be a really great way of just splicing things together. And it could be just screenshots, it could be video, it could be you addressing the camera, it could be anything. Like it almost doesn't matter. Like you can find a creative and interesting way of showcasing the other things that are in your ecosystem. And I think for me, like I always talk about, and as someone who is a little bit perfectionistic and a little bit too preoccupied with numbers and stats, sometimes I will fixate on the last thing I did, but the thing I try to remind myself is it's not really about the last video or the last live stream. It's really about the library and the connection with the audience and building those relationships. So live streaming, like it's one tool in the content creation toolkit, and I love them all. I think they're all wonderful and they all have the potential to reach people and help people and educate people. And I think it's really worthwhile exploring whatever makes sense for your particular circumstance. So I hope this has made sense today. It's been a little bit, ironically, a little bit unstructured, but I really wanted to do it because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I used to be a lot more neurotic and a lot more structured. And I don't want to be neurotic again, but I definitely think I would be good to bring back some more definitive structure to the shows. And I really do like the idea of the 4 segments over the hour. So I'm going to go off and think about how I might bring that back to both of the shows. Next week, I will be doing OBS Obsessed, the OBS Studio specific show. So you can check that out at the YouTube channel. I'll be going out to wherever you're watching currently. So wherever you're watching now is fine. But if you do want to check that out at YouTube, it's youtube.com/@LearnLivestreaming. And Livestream Consultants writes, having as a pre-recorded ad read for your own stuff gives you that 20, 30 or 60-second break to take care of whatever you need to. Pre-planning when in your stream can be good too. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I hope this has been useful. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope you have a great week and a great weekend when you get there. I realize I'm already here in the future. But if you're not here already, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.